Welcome to the News9 Plus Show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. It's a case that's shocked India. 39-year-old CEO of an AI startup allegedly killed her 4-year-old son. She was caught red-handed with a child's body in a bag. In 2021, Suchana Seth was listed as one of the 100 brightest women in artificial intelligence. She launched her own company, but what would drive her to kill her 4-year-old child? Joining me to discuss this are counselling psychologist Dr. Nisha Khanna, Suraj Nandrekar, senior journalist Goa, my colleague Mohammad Wajihullah, and Anthony Sanu. Suraj, first the details. What happened in this case?
On Monday, this lady, Suchana Seth, checked into a hotel in Kandoli. And yesterday, actually, in the afternoon, the police, the hotel staff realized that there was something fishy when she wanted to go by a car to Bengaluru instead of the flight.
Right.
Yeah. After the lady was in a hurry as such, and the staff was suspicious of what exactly was the thing. When they went in the hotel room, they found out that some blood stains, and that is when they contacted the police. The lady left by a taxi to Bengaluru, by a Goan taxi actually, and the driver was picking company, and that was the advantage the police got. When they were on the way, the police called up the driver. Actually, initially they spoke to her, but she waited some questions. But then the police called up the taxi driver and spoke to him in Konkani and told him to take the taxi to the nearest police station. And that is how she got caught.
Right, it's remarkable, Suraj. I mean, one talks about the police being slow-footed and, arrive much after the crime has been committed, which was the case in this as well. But the speed with which they reacted, like you just told us, and they, caught her as she was escaping with a child's body. I mean, that suggests, a level of sensitive policing that they, moved in so quickly after the report from the hotel. But how is Goa reacting to this murder right now, Suraj? I mean, this is a case that shocked all of us here, but tell us about Goa. Goa is an idyllic holiday destination where people love to have a good time and, take it easy. But how has Goa reacted to this very violent and bizarre, gruesome crime?
Yeah, first of all, let me tell you that this is not the first case that Goa police has cracked within 24 hours.
Right.
Goa police has very good detection rate, and it has done it. We have some very good investigators, and we have actually done much better than most of the metropolitan or the major city police. Now coming to Goa's reaction to this, actually Goa is shocked with this. How can a 4-year-old be murdered by her own mother? Actually, it's very difficult to digest this, and everybody has been talking about this, and the news channels, the newspapers. You see at the police station, there has been a huge rush.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to ask Dr. Khanna this. Dr. Khanna, the police a little while earlier said that Suchana was unhappy with the court order that she got in this particular case. I mean, they had been going through a divorce, she and her husband, and hence she decided to kill her son. I mean, divorce is stressful on all parties involved, but why would she kill her son? I mean, what explains this kind of bizarre behavior?
So, first of all, the maternal felicide is this act when a child is being murdered by the mother. So, the research says there are major prime, I will say, motives behind when a mother is killing the child. The first one they said it, this is very clear. First of all, you all have to understand that the person who killed it, the mother who killed the child must be having depression, having psychosis, maybe having mental health treatment, having suicidal thoughts, maybe under the influence of substance abuse or drugs or alcohol. So the basic thing is that why the mother can kill the child, there may be the 5 major motives behind that. The first is altruistic felicide. The reason they say is that mother thinks the world is very cruel. I can save the child from the worst of the things to face. So that's why mother can try to kill the child or kill the child. Second is acutely psychotic felicide, where the mother can get some commands, or I thought say in our language we says that hallucination or acute psychosis is there, where the mother can think of killing the child and kill the child. Third, this is fetal maltreatment feticide. In this way says that it is maybe out of neglect, or maybe out of child abuse, maybe the person is doing something, or by mistake some incident happened, and the child basically due to that, or due to that maltreatment, child is passed away. Another they says there is unwanted child feticide. The mother doesn't want to give the birth to the child, and maybe find, or sometimes find the child as a hindrance in the growth. It may be personal growth, it may be professional growth, or maybe find is the reason of all the troubles in his or her life.
Right, but so in this case, Dr. Khanna, in this, yes, sorry.
Yes. Pointing out the fifth one, the most rarest, maybe can be go to in this particular case is spouse revenge feticide, where when a mother kills her child, especially to emotionally harm the father of the child. So, I don't know, in this particular case, it may be, as you said, that she was going through a divorce. It may be she has already a mental health issues going on. She may be having hallucinations. She may be under influence of some drugs and substance abuse or alcohol. And along with that, she must want to having a revenge personality, where she want to take that, okay, I want to harm the partner. Maybe.
Through
most
the child.
Of the time, most proceedings happenings, and most of the time I have observed during the counseling sessions also, mothers stopped allowing their children to meet the father. The vice versa. Most of the time, especially the female, they don't allow their children to meet their especially the father, because they know it is the weakest thing. How they can hurt the father. They want to take the
manipulate
control
the child and in fact, Anthony, you've been listening to this, and the fact is, what is more worrying? I mean, the fact of such a horrific crime, or it's been happening, as Dr. Khanna mentioned, with such regularity that you even have a term for it, maternal filicide. What are your thoughts on this?
I think it's irrespective of the fact as to who the perpetrator is or was. I think what remains gruesome is the fact that a child was killed. Of course, it's shocking that a mother has done this, but I think what remains to be seen is, I think we have to understand also what are the reasons behind this. I think at the moment, I think for us to jump the gun and make our own assumptions would be wrong. I think we should wait for investigations. We should get a complete picture, because I think context is king. I'm not saying, I'm not giving a free hand to the mother, but I think it's very important to understand that side of the story also. Of course, that's despicable. It doesn't justify, but I'm sure, I think there's a larger story that we are not aware of. I think let's wait for that.
Let's get Vaji in on this. Vaji is in Bangalore, my colleague Mohammad Vajiullah. What drove the CEO, Suchana, to murder her child, Vaji? What are we hearing from Bangalore?
Sandeep, one thing is very difficult to understand is the background of the girl of Suchana Seth, a 39-year-old, somebody who was well versed with AI ethics, who had achieved a lot of laurels, and somebody who was a very powerful figure in the artificial intelligence, and somebody who nobody could believe that somebody with her stature, with her capabilities, would do something gruesome like this. So this has already been a very shocker, but from what we've understood from the investigation and from the source-based information that we're receiving from our sources in Chitradurga, where the postmortem is going right now, is that there is no injury at the body of the child, and it is believed that he had died due to suffocation. And the blood stains that the hotel staff had seen at the hospital, at the hotel where she was staying in Goa, is believed to be the bloodstain of Suchana Seth, because she had tried to commit suicide by slitting her hand, is what we've been told from the police sources that we've got in Chitradurga. Now, the police as of now has registered a case in the Kalangut police station under a cognizable offence such as 302, on the basis of the complaint that the hotel is 302201 and the Section 8 of the Goa Act. But as of now, the clear idea of the motive hasn't come out. Yes, there have been a strange relationship with her husband, and he was supposed to see the child on Sunday. All this was there, but then she killing the child and then even trying to commit suicide is something that has to be noted. And like Anthony said, that we cannot jump to any conclusion. But this idea of somebody who is so well versed in her field, somebody who's achieved a lot of laurels, coming to the extent of doing such a gruesome murder and then trying to flee from Goa and coming back to Bangalore. What could that motive be after committing a crime in Goa? You are coming all the way to your house in Bangalore.
Yeah.
What would be the mental state of the girl? Something that we still have to we'll get to know in the coming few days.
Right.
But from what we know is this is what has happened so far in this particular case.
Right. In fact, I want to ask Dr. Khanna. Dr. Khanna, what Vaji just mentioned, the fact that Suchana had tried to slash her wrists and commit suicide, and the blood was actually hers. Does that suggest that she was going through some kind of depression, or or possibly some?
It's called self-mutilation, and the suicidal thoughts. We already mentioned it that,
Yes.
and most of the time because there may be lack of support system.
Right.
I don't know that most of the time when woman goes through a divorce process.
Yes.
I don't know how family supports and
Right.
how the social circle supports, because lots of time how much independent the woman is are not ready to take the divorce step because
Yeah.
the society is not able
They're worried
to
about
accept it.
society and what society will say.
Society,
Right?
what the stigma is there, how
Yeah.
much successful you are, maybe you are not making your partner happy, maybe sometimes you have a lot of misunderstandings which you are unable to clear, and you
Right.
have no choice to go through this process of divorce. Maybe because if he was going through the divorce process, maybe divorce was her ultimate choice, or she was doing it under pressure and she's finding there is no other choice to make the relationship. So that may be one of the reasons. And when you are talking about the suicidal attempt, which is called in a way self-mutilation, where
Yeah.
a person is thinking of committing suicide, then I was telling you there is a primary first motive is that maybe I should not make my child live in this world because the world is so unsafe for my child.
Right.
And I should go and I would say cut myself also because I don't deserve her to see or him to see this world without me, and the
Right.
life without a parent would be very difficult for the child.
Right.
So I would say that I don't know how much the support system she was getting, because
Right.
that plays an important role when you have a mental health issues.
Yes.
And when you are going through stress, and especially when you are CEO of some company, you became all alone.
Yes.
You can't share your things out because you know that it can become public very easily, and people can take advantage of that, and it can
Right.
be go against you professionally also.
Yeah.
So sometimes in that scenario, people don't share out their heart out. How close you are with someone with whom you share your heart, that's very important. And that's why we say is that don't go to a psychiatrist if you are not looking for a medication part. At
Yeah.
least you go to a psychologist. Share
Yes.
your emotions, share your heart out. What is bothering you? What is not bothering you? How you want the things and how things are turning out. It's very important, because when you share your heart out and where there is someone who is empathetic and I would say non-judgmental and listen about your concerns, it would be easy to come out and your resilience level improve, I would say, at a path. So that these things are very important. Sometimes when you are going through a low phase or a depressive phase, you need to memorize the happy moments,
Right.
what the achievements you have, either on a personal or professional level. And it means again
Yeah.
the person in such scenario is emotionally very weak or
Right.
emotionally very vulnerable.
Absolutely.
So
And
I think
yeah.
most the data police can collect from the surrounding people, her phone calls, her text messages, who was her support system. Because in such scenarios, people really ask for help. And that's the major thing that people go for this drastic step.
Right.
Because no one
Suraj.
can understand their emotional thing.
Yes, I
People
want
go
to
and
bring in
themselves.
Dr. Khanna. I want to bring in Suraj here at this point. Suraj, what are the next steps now in this case? How does the Goa police now take this case forward? The case, as you mentioned, has been registered in the Kalangut police station. How will the investigations now proceed?
Just now, a few hours, an hour ago, the North Goa Superintendent of Police, Nitin Walson, addressed a press conference. He said that Suchana has been booked under Goa Children's Act,
Yeah.
and the police are investigating further to find out the exact motive. Though it has been said that because of the divorce and her husband, all those theories are being spoken about. But SP said that as of now, they have not interrogated the accused, and so far they do not know what exact the thing is.
Right.
And as the case progresses, as the investigations happen, they will come to know what is the exact motive behind such a gruesome act.
Right. In fact, Dr. Khanna, now you were mentioning earlier that that there are these warning signs that a person like this, who's going through this mental condition, like Suchana possibly was in the last couple of days, how does someone around them, spot a person who's either depressed or suicidal, or would like to would probably do something, take an extreme step like what she did? What are the warning signs?
So when you say the people having the depressive symptoms, most of the time they withdraw themselves from the social circle. They cut off them. They don't go and interact with the people. Especially they have the problem in asking and receiving help. Third thing we always talk about, they are feeling low and depressed. Nothing makes them interested. And especially when the person is having delusions or suicidal thoughts, they rarely share with the people in the surroundings what sort of thoughts they are having. As I said, the more lonelier you are on that. And these sorts of symptoms may, I would say, exist from 14 to 21 days, having frequent crying spells. We don't know whether that she must be having some hallucinations also or not. And again, it is just depressive symptoms were there or manic symptoms were there. Because sometimes some psychiatric illnesses were there where the person is having two phases. One is maniac phase and another is depression phase. In that phase, the person thinks I can handle myself alone by my own. And in another phase, they think I am feeling helpless. And these mood swings again consistent for longer run. And then become a personality trait. And when these symptoms are there, when you have insomnia, you are not getting sleep, you are frequently into the habit of either smoking or drinking, you all mostly sometimes talk about suicidal, you talk about negative things in your life, you keep reminding the negative incidents of your life, and you talk about that there is nothing good in life. Or you are feeling hopelessness, the feeling of hopelessness is there. And definitely, as I said, the lack of support system. Sometimes you ask for help, but there is no one who can do help to you. And these people sometimes, I don't know whether this person approached for a professional help or not. Sometimes they approach for professional help, and that sometimes they withdraw the medicines, then they have the side effects for that. Again, if they are approaching, how much they were comfortable with the professional. Because talking about the thoughts of suicide is very intimate thoughts, even self-mutilation. Because when I do in counseling in the clinics, I would say yesterday before your consultation, before having this show also, I was dealing with a client who cut herself. She hit her husband also, she self-mutilated herself. So you can imagine that the level of stress was so much high because she was thinking my husband is drinking too much and not controlling her drinking. So I have to hit my husband, and then she tried to hurt herself out of guilt. Maybe
so those are the warning signs to look out for. I'm afraid I'm totally out of time here, Dr. Khanna, but thank you so much for those insights. That's the case that was rocked India. It's shocked India, in fact. 39-year-old CEO who's murdered her child, taken that drastic step. We really don't know why. We can only guess. But I'd like to thank Dr. Khanna, my colleagues Vaji and Suraj for joining us this evening to talk about this very bizarre case. Within 16 hours, the Indian Army's para brigade had landed in Malé and driven out the mercenaries. Now, joining me to discuss this today is someone who had a ringside view of events that day. Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia, former Director General Military Operations, who was part of Operation Cactus. General Bhatia, welcome to the News9 Plus Show.
Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you, News9. Always great to be on your show.
I want to take you back to November of 1988. Just, this operation that was launched from cold start, executed in 16 hours. Tell us why this is such a big deal. I mean, you normally think that militaries are prepared for such eventualities, but in 16 hours, how did that happen?
See, it was the November 1988, and we were not really, either tasked, rolled to carry out such operations. The focus in 1988 was Sri Lanka. There was the IPK.
Of course, you had Op Pavan on.
Yeah, Op Pavan, which was July 1987. So all our focus and energies were on Sri Lanka, and suddenly Maldives comes up on the on the stage after a coup which happened on the 3rd November morning. And we were told within hours to move and to rescue the president of Maldives, who was a duly elected president on 3rd of November. He was sworn in 12th of November. And we honestly did not know where Maldives exactly was and what was the layout of Maldives, or where Malé was, where Halule was, whether Halule and Malé were different islands also. And the beauty is that we were given a task and we completed the mission well in time. And we even had they also requested the US, and the US came in on the 4th late afternoon, and there was still about 4 to 5 hours sailing time away from Malé. So that was the speed, the precision. It was a surgical operation. executed exceedingly well with no collateral damage, with no casualties to own troops.
Right, and as you mentioned, the most important part of it is that it was a cold start operation. Like literally, you went in blind, you launched, and arrived in Male in a matter of hours, and you did that. Normally, militaries prepare for these kind of eventualities, right? They rehearse and they do that. They set up mock buildings, like we hear about what the Israelis did in Entebbe. But this one was a ultimate example of the army going in completely cold and saving the day, as was the case. But General Bhatia, you were a major then in the 6th Para Brigade.
Yeah, I was the brigade major of the 50 Para Brigade.
Right.
So brigade major, like chief operations officer, and 6th Para was the battalion, which is, of course, I also belong to 6th Para.
Yes.
We spearheaded the operation along with the Para Brigade.
Right. And General Bhatia, I have to ask you this now. 35 years later, India and Maldives, the relations are literally at the lowest they have been in over 3 decades. Why do you think the Maldivian ministers reacted the way they did a few days back to Prime Minister Modi's tweets? And how does that, pain you as a veteran who's helped liberate Maldives from the scourge of, mercenaries and a coup?
Yeah, I can't understand the rationale behind it. It fails me actually, because India is we are neighbors.
Yes.
And we have always had very good relations, and we always come. Whenever Maldives needed it, whether it's the 3rd November 1988 coup, whether it was Operation Need when they ran out of water in December 2014,
yes.
whether it's tsunami, it was always India which came to the aid, and immediately without any conditions.
Right.
And also India is India is a country which is responsible, which is risen, and we have always gone in and helped our neighbors and always come out. Unlike many other nations who go in and never come out.
That's right. And the classic case of that, Anthony, is Bangladesh. I mean, the Indian army went in, they created a new nation of Bangladesh, and within a fortnight they were out.
Bangladesh, Sri Lanka,
yes.
Maldives in any case, Nepal, if you see 1952 and Tribhuvan. So we have always had we respected the sovereignty of our neighbors.
Yes. So why, General Bhatia, then why is it that India is perceived as a big brother? Is it literally because we intimidate a lot of our smaller neighbors, or is it because possibly in this case, in the Maldivian case, that you have a bigger neighbor who's there, not so close neighbor, but China is the factor here, and the president is now in. Yeah.
Yes, Sandeep, you hit the nail on the head. It's the China factor, because China has got, they have this strategy of debt trap.
Right.
There's a strategy of world diplomacy.
Yes.
And we practice sharp power. Right.
Right. Sharp
power is either you're with us or you're against us.
Right.
And a nation like Maldives, just 500,000 people, 11 islands, about 200 inhabited.
Yeah.
They have to attract economic aid.
Right.
And today, China is the one who gives the economic aid much more than anyone else. But it comes at a cost, like Sri Lanka has seen.
Absolutely.
Like many other countries in Africa have seen, countries in Europe have seen that.
Right.
So that comes at a cost, which I think the Maldivians, looking at the present, they're not looking at the mid to long term at all. They're looking at the immediate near term, and they're going to come to grief. It's happened earlier.
Yeah.
And I hope it doesn't happen, but I anticipate this happening as a student of strategy.
Yes.
The writing on the wall that they'll have to pay a very heavy price for this at the hands of the Chinese.
Right.
And they'll come back like Sri Lanka did, others did, to India for help.
In fact, Anthony, we were talking about debt. My colleague Anthony and me were just talking about Sri Lanka's debt trap diplomacy and China's debt trap diplomacy that Sri Lanka would fallen into. Anthony, what's your take on this? Do you think that Maldives could be plunging into a similar situation? General Bhatia mentioned they're looking at the present, not the future.
I think history tends to repeat itself. And given the way that Sri Lanka has gone, we've seen the chaos. Yeah. We still remember, it's all fresh in our memory. Chinese aid comes at its own cost. Right. We all know why China does what it does. Its entire policy in this region has been to surround India through aid to other nations and to control them. Yeah. So, of course, I mean, if Sri Lanka has fallen to that, if Sri Lanka has fallen to this, Maldives could again be the next nation, of course. I mean, of course, as Sir said, writing is on the wall. I think future will only make us wiser. Sir, I again wanted to ask you, how, of course, we've seen how Chinese aid in this case has sort of crippled Sri Lanka, right? So do you see, what is the kind of timeline that you have in your mind in terms of Maldives? Do you think that this is something that's Maldives is inching closer to the Sri Lanka situation or the Sri Lankan crisis that we saw not very long ago?
Yeah, given the fact that President Muzu is in Beijing as we speak.
Yeah, it's a 5-day visit, and the indications which are coming out of Beijing is that the Maldivians are seeking aid, and the cost of the aid is well known to us, and I think it'll be in the near term only. It's a year or two down the line when they'll be paying a very heavy price for it. But we also have to understand, Maldives have to understand this, Indians have to understand this, that we have lived peacefully for centuries together as nations, if not as states, because we are a new state and an old nation, old civilization. But the fact remains that most of the Maldivians prefer to come to India for medical treatment, for education.
Yes.
There were 5 Maldivians studying here for education out of a population of 500,000, which is big enough. And we are their immediate neighbors. And Chinese, it really comes at a big cost. And even Pakistan is now realizing that. Leave aside, Sri Lanka, the CPEC, it's not working well for Pakistan also. And Pakistan also realizing that. I wonder how come Maldivians have not factored this in.
Right.
Which is so obvious.
Absolutely, that's one of the most bizarre, questions that we've all been
and
asking.
And also the boycott also.
And then you're, calling for a boycott as well, and of India. But General Bhatia, given the fact that the Maldivian president is in Sri Lanka, is in China as we speak, what are the possibilities that Maldives could give China a base there? And why would China require a base? Because in the Indian Ocean, they already have bases in Djibouti and in Gwadar in Pakistan. How would a base in Maldives help the Chinese and the PLA Navy?
The Maldivians, they complete the chain. It is rumored, and I don't know if it's rumored or not, but it is there in many strategists writing about it. They want to create in one of the islands. They want to create 200-meter deep, sort of a port. That means that even the aircraft carrier can be, positioned there,
right?
And that gives China a reach which is unimaginable, because Maldives also happens to be on the sea lines of communication, coming from east to west and west to east, and dominates the Indian Ocean region in their own channels.
Absolutely.
Other channels. So China is looking at the long term, and it has given a bait to Maldives, which Maldives, for their own domestic reasons and for their own compulsions at the political level, are not able to refuse. And that is what the Chinese have done all along. Whether you take Africa, whether you take South Asia, or even ASEAN countries and all. So that is what their strategy is all about. And still, for the present, we have sacrificed the future.
Absolutely, and it's very alarming what you just mentioned, General Bhatia, the fact that China could get a deep water base in Maldives. Even the possibility of that sounds so frightening, just 600 kilometers away from the Indian coastline, and not to mention just north of the US base at Diego Garcia. But General Bhatia, now that we are in the situation that we are in, the ties are at possibly one of the lowest that they've ever been since that dramatic, heroic rescue that you carried out in 1988, you and your men. Where does that leave us? What are the options before India now? How do we take this forward?
See, I'm not saying that let's treat them as this is the India's philosophy and policy is never to interfere in a country's internal affairs.
Right.
We haven't done so. We may feel bad about it right now, but I'm sure the Maldivians, like it happened last time also when Suraj was there, they'll come back to they'll come back to India. We have to live together, and we have to live together always. And I think they'll come back to us with time, realize the mistake, realize the follies, and they'll come back to India, and we'll have our relations will grow. It is people to people connect.
Yes.
There is a certain section which has been because of our social media and the information campaigns which nations carry out, especially China, who have come to believe that their future is with China. Right? It is not so. With time, they will realize the mistake. And it will be back to India, it will be back to Sri Lanka, it will be back to Singapore. That is the natural affinity of the Maldivians is with Sri Lanka and India, because they're the immediate neighbors.
Absolutely, and spoken like a true officer and a gentleman, General Bhatia. I must mention the fact that you, a person who's been at such a critical juncture in India's military history, part of a rescue, attempt, a successful rescue operation, Cactus. Last question before I go, General Bhatia, is why was it called Cactus? Was it because of the difficulty involved, or why wasn't it called, Operation Vijay, for instance? That seems to be the default setting for a lot of operations. Why Cactus?
We didn't know it was Cactus for a long time. We only came to it of Cactus after we had completed the operation. Because when you do an operation like this, it was all stations go, and we were just moving. Fortunately, we were so well trained, we were so well led.
Absolutely.
Brigadier Balsara, the Brigadier Joshi, RJ Jalan. The team just fell in the right place. And the men, not to talk of them, they're not restrained. They're not. Let me give credit to Group Captain Bevu, the Air Force, the Navy came to being.
No, in fact,
it's militarization, Sandeep. But all three services actually played up, and we were so well. There's so much of cooperation.
It's possibly one of the first times since the 71 war. Correct me if I'm wrong, General Bhatia, where all three services came together almost seamlessly. The Navy, the Army, the Air Force. You had Marine Commandos. All of them working, seamlessly, hand in hand, without even a theatre command being in existence. That just tells you sometimes, it's like the great Indian wedding. Things just happen and they come together, and everything's good.
That is India. That's in the military also.
Yeah.
I remember, I recollect when I went to Brigadier Balsara, since at decision time. He says we land, and Group Captain Bevu landed his aircraft with 176 men on board, with a lot of fuel on board, on an airstrip which was not even secured. We did not know, even someone had put. Just imagine someone putting a jeep on that on the runway.
Absolutely.
What would happen to the complete aircraft, the complete operation, the complete load? The risk taken by Group Captain Bevu, hats off to him. It was his call.
And in fact,
he could easily said,
yes,
can I take a minute more?
Yes,
logically, militarily, there were three options. Right. One option was to jump. We had the parachutes. Had that happened, 99% of us would have drowned in the ocean. Right. The most logical second option, the riskiest option, was to land. Riskiest. And the third, the logical military option, was to get back to Trivandrum and launch the next day morning with a single airfield. Right. But then, who dares wins? Fortune favors the brave.
Who dares wins? Fortune favors the brave, and who dares wins. And General Bhatia would be part of a very interesting episode of first person, where he narrates to us in very great detail what happened on those 16 hours over Malé. You can watch that in the next couple of days only on the News9 Plus show. But thank you very much, General Bhatia, for your thoughts and your time this evening on the News9 Plus show. We look forward to speaking to you more often. Thank you very much, sir. The Arabian Sea is currently witnessing the most intense deployment of Indian naval warships and aircraft in a long time. There are at least 10 frontline destroyers and frigates, which are called principal surface combatants. They're armed with guided missiles, guns, helicopters, and they carry marine commandos on board. Now, joining me to discuss this interesting state of play is Vice Admiral Anil Chawla, former CNC Southern Naval Command. Admiral Chawla, welcome back to the News9 Plus show.
Thank you very much, Sandeep. Good to be here.
Admiral Chawla, when is the last time we saw such an intense deployment of principal surface combatants, frigates and destroyers across the Arabian Sea?
I think it's been a very long time, in fact, not in recent history. I think possibly during Operation Vijay, during the Kargil war was possibly the last time, and subsequently after that the Operation Parakram. I think these two, and I was part of the second deployment. So I think this is the probably almost after 20 years that we are having such an intense deployment of Indian naval warships in the Red Sea in particular.
Absolutely. And Admiral Chawla, I recall in our previous meetings, you used to always tell us about this importance of the sea lanes of communication. But I guess it's only when the drones and the guided missiles start flying around that you realize the importance of, a tank of petrol in your car, or, your export, your trade. Tell us why the Arabian Sea is so critical for India, why it's the lifeline for India's economy.
There are a number of reasons, Sandeep. Firstly, of course, as you rightly mentioned, oil and gas. More than 60% of our oil and gas requirements, though 2023 has been an exceptional year because of the Ukraine war, when we shifted a lot of supplies to Russia. And so they came in from the east. But I think that is temporary because the Persian Gulf and the Red Sea routes are much, much closer. So principally, the importance of this is firstly, of course, for the oil and gas supplies. 60%, as I mentioned, come from here. The second part is that we have a huge diaspora in the Middle East, and that diaspora is critical for our foreign remittances to maintain a balance of payments. Thirdly, of course, our exports and imports, particularly to Europe and I would say West Africa and the east coast of the USA, they traverse through this route, which comprise almost 50% of our entire trade. And of course, for many other reasons in terms of keeping the seas around us peaceful, to ensuring that we do play a predominant role in the northern Indian Ocean region. This region is critical for us.
Absolutely, as you mentioned, and there's a think tank report which says that there could be a loss of something like $30 billion to the Indian economy based on these disturbances in and around the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. But Admiral Chawla, the Indian Navy is one of the best such forces in the world. It's one of the top navies in the world, and it learns from every engagement, every operation, every deployment. What are the lessons that the men in white would take from the men and women, I must correct myself, men and women in white, from this deployment, which is not that old, it's about a month or so, but what are the lessons that you've learned from this new phase of war that we are seeing in the Arabian Sea?
I think these are a continuation of the lessons, as I mentioned last time. Also, from 2008 onwards, we have been witnessing the increase in deployments. Firstly, because of piracy.
Yes.
Subsequently, a couple of years ago, because of the disturbances that happened in the Persian Gulf, particularly the Strait of Hormuz, and now, of course, the fallout of the Israeli-Palestine conflict, that is the Houthis carrying out random attacks on merchant shipping. So the first lesson is that this region is, and I think we've been mentioning it in almost every policy paper and write-up, is perennially unstable, if I can put it that way. So I had mentioned in my article in Times of India of this arc of maritime instability, to our west, which starts from the Suez Canal and comes all the way through to the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb, and of course to the north, the Strait of Hormuz. So this entire area, as you see, is full of conflicts, internal conflicts, external conflicts, failed states like Somalia and Yemen, and all encompassing one of the most critical waterways of the world. So I think the prime lesson is that this area is not been stable for more than 150 years. It will continue to be unstable in the future unless governance comes in on the landward side, because you see a huge amount of conflicts, whether it's with Ethiopia, Eritrea, South Sudan, and the Sudan, whether you see the internal conflict in Yemen, which is spilling over to Saudi Arabia. Whether you see the Somalia, both the Horns of Africa and the Horns of Arabia are totally unsettled. And then you have the tensions going on with Iran and the West to the north of that. And so all this makes for a heady cocktail of both state and non-state actors, for which you need to be ready at all times, and you need to have requisite force levels and preparedness.
Right, that's a big conundrum for India, isn't it, Admiral Chawla? The fact that you have an arc of instability that you so brilliantly put it, and the fact that you have to source 60% of your energy requirements from that arc of instability. It's almost Arabian Nights like kind of a dilemma there, But Anthony, you've been researching a story on the Indian Navy and the Marine Commando deployments in the Arabian Sea. You have something to ask Admiral
I want to ask,
Chawla.
One reason, I was reading on this, and then I think, of course, the Indian Navy started working on escort and rescue operations, especially to prevent piracy, around 2008. Then there was a lull. Now, since December 2023, there seems to be this uptick in piracy, right? Now, a lot of people would say that that's because the US has had to redirect some of its fleet towards the Red Sea to counter Houthi attack and whatever has been happening in the Israel-Gaza conflict. Now, we've also had to do that. Now, we've deployed 10 warships, right? I mean, we can classify them as warships in that region. Now, of course, for a variety of reasons. Now, do you think that, we've also concentrated too much in that area? Do you think that we also now, is that a challenge for us? Because, I mean, not everyone has ample resources, right? We also have to distribute our resources and our naval power also. Do you think that, focusing too much on that area could be an advantage for some of our eager neighbors? I don't know if that's a question I may ask.
No, I don't think that would make any difference. But overall, sustainability is an issue. Our Western neighbor is really in no position today to counter us, whether on the land or at sea. But definitely, two things come to my mind. The first is that this deployment for a long term is unsustainable, because you need a lot of resources, and the ships have to be turned around. So you need, for deploying one ship there, you need at least 2 more in reserve, which can go in. You have to rotate the ships. There is an expenditure of fuel, and indeed the deployments for the anti-piracy. We have had to change the types of ships that we use to make it more cost-effective, if I can put it that way. So firstly, it does impact the country's exchequer. Of course, the positive part is that it enhances preparedness of the ships. But in the long term, this is not really sustainable for any navy in the world, leave alone the Indian Navy.
Absolutely. And
the second part, of course, is that, the requirement of cooperating here cannot be, more important. That's why the task forces are there, particularly from the Western countries, because each of them contributes 1 odd ship. So I think in the long term, it is not sustainable. In the short term, and I think it will be scaled back to 1 or 2 units once the threat subsides to some extent. But more importantly, there is a requirement to cooperate with other navies, which we are doing, as I saw from the news reports, particularly in terms of sharing intelligence and information.
Right. Thank you very much for your thoughts, Admiral Chawla. And that arc of instability and the 60% energy requirements, these are alarming details and figures. And you have the Indian Navy sailing into the rescue. But thank you very much for your time and your insights. And while we're concerned with the events in the Arabian Sea, we can't take our eyes off India's northeast. Over the last 3 months, the civil war in Myanmar has been raging. The ruling military junta is close to collapse and retreating from the assault of rebel groups. Myanmar is India's land bridge to Southeast Asia. We know that. Our story, the Myanmar implosion, asks whether this civil war has blocked India's land bridge. It's cut short our Act East policy. It's part of our series this year on the shadows of war, on the regional conflicts and the impact they have on India. Download our app and watch. Thanks for watching.